Hi. I am the avatar Christopher. This podcast is part of a course by the instructor Shawn Thompson. In this podcast I will explain the criteria for competence in professional communication. Let me ask you first, do you see yourself as a person who is truthful and honest? Most people do. But what standards do you have personally to be truthful and honest? For example, do you automatically share information you see on Facebook without verifying if the information is true? If you believe something to be true, do you bother to check if there is evidence that it is true? Are you quick to click the share button? Do you think you have responsibility for the truth of information that you share? Some people share information without believing they have any responsibility when they do that. Think about it. Is that right? Here is another question. Do you think you have a right to an opinion, even if you don't check to see if that opinion is based on facts? Some people believe they can give any opinion that makes sense to them. Do you think that is right? The answers to these questions define integrity and professional competence in communication. One of the people who believes he can give opinions without facts is United States President Donald Trump. Whatever opinion Donald Trump has, he believes he has a right to utter his opinion, no matter what the effect is. Trump has a strong conviction that his opinions are the truth. But the evidence is that what matters to Trump is simply what he wants people to think. President Donald Trump and others have a campaign to destroy the credibility of the professional news media. The idea is to control what people think and believe. If people don't believe the media, they will be easier to manipulate. So, Donald Trump talks about fake news and the fake news media. He talks about witch hunts. He talks about evil Democrats. He wants to create the impression that all accusations about him are fake news. Others talk about quote alternate facts unquote, as if contrary information can be factual. Of course, that is not logical. Two contradictory facts cannot be true. For example, during the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, Donald Trump contradicted the facts about the coronavirus pandemic for his personal benefit to be re-elected as president in November. Trump said that 99% of the coronavirus cases are harmless. That is not true factually. At the same time, the news channel CNN conducted a publicity campaign called Facts Matter. If people get the wrong information about the coronavirus, they could be harmed. Facts matter. There is nothing new about trying to deceive people for political or economic purposes. It is called propaganda. Propaganda has been used to support wars, to commit genocide, to discriminate against racial groups or women, and so on. What is new is that the internet makes it much easier to spread information, both information that is true and information that is false. With so much information on the internet, people have more responsibility to decide what is true and what is false. Western democracies have the ideal that a professional and independent media can help produce the factual information that citizens need to make wise decisions. Yes, it is an ideal. Yes, journalists don't always meet the ideal. But that does not make the ideal a bad idea. Shouldn't we still try? To make the ideal work, standards are needed for professional competence in communication. That is what I am going to explain now. In this course, you should try to learn and practice the standards for professional competence in communication. Assignments in this course will be marked by this criteria. You want to be professional, truthful and honest, don't you? Hi. Christopher again. In part 2 of this podcast we examine standards for competence in professional communication. I will break this down into 6 categories. The 6 categories are, what a fact is, what an opinion is, what a citation or attribution is, what informed consent is, what a conflict of interest is, and what full disclosure is. Should we get started? Remember that you should take notes and write down questions to ask the instructor, Shawn Thompson. First, what is a fact? A fact is an empirical reality that can be observed to be the same by any rational, reasonable person without individual interpretation. For example, the moon can be observed in the night sky. We cannot touch the moon or visit the moon personally, but we can all have the same observation of the moon, whatever we think the moon is. People can be a witness to this empirical reality of the moon that others can also observe in the same way, if they are in the right place at the right time. This is why the idea of a witness is important in the justice system and in science. A witness testifies to what is observed without individual interpretation. In addition to empirical observations, facts are generally numbers and quantities that can be measured. So, facts are quantifiable and measurable. For example, We can measure the weight of an object at one point in time. Somebody might ask, are statistics and surveys facts? The answer is, partly. Statistics and surveys are often what is called a sample. A sample is a measure of part of a situation used to represent the whole. For example, during an election campaign, a sample of electors can be surveyed on a certain date to see which candidate they would vote for. The sample is only a fraction of the actual voters. But from this limited sample, it is reasonable to calculate what all voters might do. Thus a probability is produced, a statistical probability. The survey is what this sample of people were thinking at one moment in time. Their thinking and behavior may change the next day. Or the survey may not be accurate if it is not diverse enough. For example, if a survey for an election was conducted with only male voters, it might be inaccurate in terms of how women would vote. So surveys and statistics are also interpretations, and interpretations are opinions. The interpretation of a survey is an opinion based on facts. I think you see now what the implication is. The facts could be accurate, but the opinion could be wrong. A probability is always a probability. People sometimes have strong convictions that they are correct, but a strong conviction is not a fact. Facts matter. Second, what is an opinion? An opinion is a thought or an interpretation that cannot be proven factually. An opinion might be supported by facts, but an opinion is still a thought that goes beyond the facts. The opinion might be right, or the opinion might be wrong, or the opinion might be partly right and partly wrong. For example, one study found that in the school year from 2015 to 2016, 36% of the graduates of MBA programs in the world were women. What opinion can be drawn from the fact that fewer women graduate from MBA programs? Be careful what you say. Assumptions can be risky. Obviously you need to be careful how you interpret that fact. The point I am making with this example is that a fact and the interpretation of the fact are different. Also, the 36% is an average. Any particular business school could have a higher or lower average. We need opinions. We cannot live in a world of absolute certainty. We exist in the midst of events when all the facts may not be gathered and known yet, and the truths may be provisional. But we have to take action, and so we need opinions to guide us to take action with. We cannot have absolute certainty. For example, in the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, it was necessary to form opinions about the virus in order to take action, instead of waiting several years for scientists to study the virus thoroughly. In our society, we have professionals we depend upon for their opinions. Examples would be doctors, lawyers, priests, financial advisors, scientists, and so on. For example, global climate change is a complex phenomenon, and we rely on the professional opinions of climate scientists to guide us and protect us. Or, during the coronavirus pandemic, we rely on the professional opinions of doctors and scientists to guide us and protect us. So, we need opinions, and we need expert opinions, but we also need to recognize the difference between a fact and an opinion, and not confuse the two. The standard in professional communication is to separate a fact from an opinion and not confuse the two. Don't say that an opinion is a fact. Distinguish between a fact and an opinion. Tell your audience what is a fact and what is an opinion. Facts matter and opinions too. Remember that some kinds of information can be owned. There are limited legal protections under the law to own some kinds of information. An essay or a manuscript or a photo can be owned through copyright. The laws of ownership for information cover copyright, patents, and trademarks. For example, if somebody takes what somebody else has written or takes a photo that belongs to somebody else, and publishes it by posting it on the internet without permission, that is a violation of copyright. There is a legal right to sue in court for copyright violation. Third, what is a citation or attribution? A citation or attribution is transparent acknowledgement of the source of an idea or information. The word citation is used in universities and the word attribution is used in journalism. The two words mean essentially the same thing. Honest and professional communication reveals the source of information in the citation or the attribution. Where did the information come from? Who or what is the source of the information? How reliable is the information? What is the expertise of someone who is the source of information? For example, if somebody has a statistic about the number of cases of the coronavirus or the number of deaths of the coronavirus, who or what is the source of that information? Is the source reliable? Knowing the source of the information allows the audience to judge whether the information is likely to be reliable and truthful. The source can be checked. It also makes the provider of the information accountable. If there is no citation or attribution, there is no way to judge easily whether the information is reliable and trustworthy. If Donald Trump says that 99% of coronavirus cases are harmless, is that sufficient as a citation for an important medical fact? When the media show a video clip of Donald Trump saying that 99% of coronavirus cases are harmless, a responsible journalist will add the real facts at that moment. Facts matter. The source should have the expertise relevant to the topic. For example, an expert in economics has expertise in economics, but not expertise in medicine or the science of global climate change. Somebody who claims to be an expert on extraterrestrials secretly visiting planet Earth may have strong opinions, but it would be difficult to establish facts and real expertise on invisible aliens from another planet. When people are sources, their full name and affiliation needs to be given. In general, sources should not be anonymous. This is a difficult issue in journalism and needs more discussion later. Another reason for a citation or attribution is to give fair credit for the creation of an idea or an opinion. When somebody is first with an interesting new idea, that person deserves credit for the idea. It would be wrong for somebody else to steal the credit for an idea. If you cut and paste information from an article on the internet and offer no citation, you are claiming the information is yours and you are taking credit for the information. Stealing credit is called plagiarism. In plagiarism, a person copies the ideas and writing of someone else and tries to claim personal credit for the idea or for the writing. An honest and truthful person makes it clear when someone else is being quoted or when the ideas or writing or research of someone else is being repeated. Fourth, what is informed consent? Informed consent is the process of getting someone to agree to be willingly involved in participation in an event knowing the full context of that participation. For example, somebody might be asked to participate in medical trials to find a vaccination for the coronavirus. In informed consent, the person would be told all the risks and benefits of being willingly involved in the medical trials. But it would be wrong to secretly inject people in a vaccination trial without telling them all the risks and benefits. The phrase informed consent is an academic phrase for research. In journalism, the phrase that is used is called on the record. In journalism, informed consent or getting an interview on the record is the process of getting someone to willingly agree to give information to be used in publication, knowing how the information will be used, where it will be published and what the full context of the story is. Giving the full context of the story in advance helps avoid an ambush situation and gives the person being interviewed a fair chance to speak in context. The journalist needs to identify himself or herself fully, explain the reason for the interview, and explain how the interview will be used and published. This should be done before the interview begins or before the photo is taken. When the source says yes, that is an agreement between the journalist and the source. But, somebody might ask, what if somebody will lie to a journalist if the person knows he or she is being interviewed? That is a good question. And it is a difficult question of ethics in journalism. It needs more discussion at a later time. Fifth, what is a conflict of interest? Conflict of interest is a situation where a person or a legal entity has an unfair personal benefit in exercising power, influence or authority. A typical example might be that a person elected to a city council also operates a business and the council is voting on measures that affect businesses. What may be best for the citizens as a whole may not be best for the member of council who operates a business. The member of council who operates a business thus has a conflict of interest in making a decision. So, that member of the council should not participate in making the decision. An example of a conflict of interest in journalism might be a business reporter who owns stock in a certain company. If the journalist publishes a story promoting a company, then the journalist may benefit personally from people buying stock in that company. So, the journalist shouldn't publish what would benefit the journalist personally. The honest thing to do in a situation of a conflict of interest is to openly declare a conflict of interest and remove oneself from being involved in taking action. Sixth, what is full disclosure? Full disclosure is the act of declaring personal involvement in a situation, especially if there is a conflict of interest. Sometimes it is not possible or not reasonable to avoid a situation where there is a potential conflict of interest. It would be dishonest to conceal the conflict of interest, but it would be truthful to disclose the conflict of interest. For example, suppose a CNN journalist is reviewing a film like Wonder Woman owned by the Warner Media Company. I want to ask you, did you see the Wonder Woman films? Are these good films or bad films for the status of women in society? What do you think? Whatever the case, a good review of the Wonder Woman film may make money for the Warner Company. The catch is that CNN is owned by the company AT&T and AT&T owns Warner. So a good review by CNN on a Wonder Woman film could make more money for the company that owns CNN. The options are to not tell the audience about a film it may want to see, or to review the film with full disclosure of the financial relationship between CNN and the company that owns the film. Review. So, in this podcast we have examined what makes communication professional and competent. 6 phrases have been defined: fact, opinion, citation or attribution, or informed consent or on the record, conflict of interest, and full disclosure. Facts matter. This podcast is a simple introduction to these ideas, but there are more questions that need to be answered at a later time. For example, are there times when using anonymous sources is justified? Are there times when journalists should use deception to get information? In a journalist, is voting for a particular party while writing about election campaigns a conflict of interest? Does a conflict of interest extend to a person's family? These are important questions you should investigate and discuss. But for now you have basic standards to apply to information you receive and information you communicate. Imagine that you were the press spokesperson for United States President Donald Trump. You would be an employee given orders by the boss what to say. What do you do if the boss wants you to lie or to mislead people? That is a situation people face in the real world. Think about it. What do you think you would do?